But I ended up meeting my wife through some mutual friends, and I'm a big believer in God and faith, and I think that was definitely God intervening.
Slapped you right into your path, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was intervening. He was right there.
Yeah.
He knew that if I went back to Indy, it was a death sentence. He knew that I would die if I went back to Indy.
Right.
It didn't matter if I had a son. As soon as I got back into that same people, the same crowd,
You were done for.
I was done, and I would have died. I know I would have died.
And I think that's what they tell, people, even around town, they're like, you can't come back here. If you go
Yeah.
get clean, you cannot come back here until you're in a good, you don't come back.
I
don't come back.
suggest ever going back.
You will not make it. Statistically, now there's some wonderful people that have recovered that are in this community.
That are working
and
it.
they are working it. They were safe.
Definitely.
But they'll even probably be the ones to tell you, it took me a while before I needed to come back to where I was using.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you're running right back into the
Definitely.
people.
And I think that's where God intervened, and that's where I met my wife, because it's so crazy is with me and my wife, we knew all the same people. My wife's 6 years younger than me. So it's crazy that she knows a lot of the same people, or I know a lot of the same people that she does. But we've actually, because her teenage years weren't as wild as mine,
Sure.
but she got a little wilder there towards her senior year. I think most people do.
You're about to be an adult, you freak out a little bit.
Yeah, you
right?
get a little,
do
you get a
something
little, have a
silly.
little fun. You go to a couple parties or whatever.
Yeah.
But so she was actually at some of the same parties that I was at,
Wow.
and we always missed each other just by a few seconds or just by a few minutes. Or
Isn't
we was
it
in the
so
same room and
weird?
didn't even notice the other one was there.
That's crazy.
Described the same thing that happened at these parties. Oh, I was in that same room. What?
He's like,
Was
you
it?
were?
What?
I was
But the thing it was, I believe that was God intervening, because if we would have met each other at those parties,
It would have been
would've
too
never
soon
worked.
for where you needed to be.
It would have never.
You were
worked.
not in a good space. Yeah.
She would not probably even been attracted to me at all. But in my life, just wasn't, that's
Yeah.
not what she was looking. She wasn't looking for a grown adult that can't get his life together, has been in rehab and mental homes and has a kid. That
Yeah.
just sounds like a whole mess.
That sounds like a
you know?
reality show.
So
you know?
anyways, so we ended up meeting, and we instantly connected. And it's so crazy because really our lives and how we grew up are completely different from each other.
Right.
And I'm not saying she doesn't have her own problems,
Sure.
or she hasn't had her own past of things that just sucks that's happened to her too.
Yeah.
But we've lived different lives,
Yeah.
and we grew up differently. And so for us to connect like that was just crazy. And we've been together since. We've been married for 14 years, been together almost 15 years this spring. And so, but what happened when I met my wife, why that's such a crucial part of my story is it changed.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't anything my wife did necessarily, but it was. So
Sure.
her and her family were really big in their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, I don't say faith, I say relationship, because they genuinely have a relationship with God.
Right.
And I'd never heard that in my life.
Right.
Never. I never. And
You're like, wait a minute, a relationship.
and the crazy
Wait,
part was,
you know?
is on my mom's side of the family, they were Catholic. They were hardcore Catholic. So we were there.
Yeah.
And then on my stepmom's side, which was where I lived, they were Baptist. Actually, my grandpa was a Southern Baptist preacher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he was a great man. He was
Yeah.
a godly man. And I still just admire his works in life and all that he accomplished. But maybe he did, but I don't ever remember hearing I can have this direct relationship with God.
Right.
I don't ever remember that. And I think I would have stood out to me.
Yeah.
Because my idea of God and me was God's way up here, and I'm way down here. And then maybe someday
We'll
we might
connect.
get connected,
Yeah.
and I can wait in line and
Yeah.
talk and tell him what I did wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he can tell me everything I did wrong.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
I
fast
never
forward
thought
past
of
a
it
few
as
parts.
Yeah, exactly. I never thought of it as a good thing.
Yeah.
So I always feared God, which
Sure.
I mean, there is a healthy fear, but it was an unhealthy.
Unhealthy fear, yeah.
So my wife and her family, they were always talking about God like it was their next door neighbor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are you talking about? They're
Right,
like, oh,
right,
he's
isn't
talking
it?
about
Yeah.
Jesus. We're talking about Papa. What?
Yeah.
You know? And I thought that was mind blowing
Yeah.
to me. So, anyways, my wife, she worked in a nursing home at the time. She was a CNA, and I was borrowing her car because I was a loser. I didn't have my own car.
bless.
I traded my card for weed. That was the actual real story. But anyways, I was supposed to pick her up one night, and I'd already drank like a fifth of Jack.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I forgot about that. You're going to have your mom. She was pretty upset with me.
Right.
But anyways, the next day, I think it was the next day or the day after, it was within a couple of days, she was at work again. And I'm just sitting there in the room upstairs, and I wasn't drunk. I don't think I was on anything. And I just remember like kind of being a little depressed. And I remember feeling like I was falling back into that depression. Like I felt like I've been on this manic high for
You know
a
the
month,
warning signs.
and I could feel
there you
it.
go.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could feel that twist. I could feel it going around the turn, and I was like, "Damn, this is not good." You know. And I remember thinking, I can't keep doing this.
No.
I'm a dog chasing his tail.
It's a
And
revolving door.
I'm just doing the same thing over
Yeah.
and over, and I know where it ends.
Mm-hmm.
I know how this ends every time, and I don't want to lose this.
No.
So that was the moment I remember thinking, I've got to do something different. So what do I do different? I've done this. I've had the cars. I've had the girlfriends. I've had the jobs. I've lost it all. I've had nothing, and none of it made me happy. I've even tried to kill myself to make myself happy. As crazy as that sounds.
It's not crazy though. You think that's just gonna heal what you're battling?
I think it will just take it away. I don't have to deal with it anymore. So that's the point. I remember taking so many drugs so many times just to be happy, just hoping that it would take me away.
Yeah.
I'd be unhappy when it didn't. But anyways, I did anything to make myself happy.
Sure.
And it never worked. But one thing I never tried was giving my life to God, having this relationship with God. You know, if it didn't work, what's it gonna do?
Right. I try. It's something. It's something
not
new.
gonna affect me in a negative
right.
way.
You're just
it's
where
not
you
gonna
were.
ruin my life.
Right.
I'm not gonna lose my car because of it.
But why not risk it and see what it does for you?
Just give it a shot.
You know?
Right? Try this Jesus thing out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I thought. I'm gonna try this Jesus
I'm gonna try
thing
this Jesus
out.
thing.
So I remember we were kind of attending a church at the time. It was called the Alley, and it was very, very unconventional church, very just different.
Is that the one in Seymour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very like concert-like setting.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of inspiration at that place because it just wasn't your normal church setting. But anyways, I was kind of going there at that point in time, and so I had that in the back of my head. And then I remember them talking about the sinner's prayer and asking for salvation, and I didn't remember it word for word, so I just did my own little version of a sinner's prayer. Basically, just ask God in my heart. And I remember the first like real earnest prayer I'd ever said in my life was at that moment. And I said, Lord, if there's something you can do to help me with addiction.
Yeah.
Because whether it's me or it's somebody else in my life, it's completely ruined my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything else that's ruined it more.
I'm tired of fighting it by myself.
Can't do this
man.
anymore.
Yeah.
So if you're there, let's do it, you know?
Picking up that direct line, you know?
So this is the crazy part is I'm a very punctual person. So usually I try to get everywhere early as I possibly can. And then I didn't have a lot going on in life. Didn't have nothing going on in life. So I was always early to my job, an hour early. And I would just sit there in the break room, wait to clock in. I'd get in trouble for clocking in early. But anyways, this next day, the power went out overnight. And my alarm clock didn't have batteries in it. The alarm clock didn't go off. I overslept. I was about 40 minutes or so late. Well, I went nonstop that whole day because I was running behind. A buddy asked me if I could help him move some stuff. So cool, yeah, all right. Before you know it, it's 10 o'clock at night, you know, and it was already late. I had to go to bed. I had to wake up early in the morning. So I went home, I took a shower, I went straight to bed. I didn't think nothing about it. The next morning, I'll be dang if I'm late again.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh my, this whole God thing is not working out.
Wait a minute.
This is supposed to be the good stuff, you know? I've never been late before, you know? So anyways, I'm running late again, and my buddy, his brother couldn't help him move the rest of his couch and all this to his apartment. Is there any way you can help me again? I'll pay you $20, whatever. So anyways, I go help him. It's like 10 o'clock at night again. I get home, take a shower, and I made sure I set like 3 alarms because I was like, I'm not doing this again. Yeah.
Nope.
So I woke up super early the next morning and had enough time to, go downstairs. And so I go downstairs, and my routine was I would get a 40 ounce and drink it for breakfast.
Oh man.
Take a few pills and, smoke one on the way. And I would pour promethazine in my cup and just drink that all day while I worked.
Right.
And I stayed on that level
Yeah.
until I fell asleep, and I did it again. I always did that. But this morning was different. I grabbed the beer. It was so crazy. It was so unknowingly. I grabbed the beer. I said, this is a 40 ounce. I grabbed the beer. I walked straight over to a steel trash can that was empty. It had a flip top lid. So you take your foot and you can
Kick
push
that
it.
sucker up.
Right?
Yep.
So it pops open and boom. I hear that boom on the bottom of this trash can. And it was like this light bulb went off in my head.
Wow.
I was like,
oh. That's what.
oh,
Yeah. Ding.
what did I just do?
Yeah.
Right. So at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? But then I realized for the last 2 days,
You did.
I hadn't done anything because I was so busy.
And you were late. And
I didn't have a chance to. I didn't have a chance to think about
No.
getting drunk, getting high. I was so busy that I couldn't keep up with myself. So when it came to the opportunity to do it, I was so busy. I was just bam.
Wow.
And I remember, it says in the word that you should never test the Lord, but I did. Bad mistake. But anyways, I did. I looked up at the sky. There was nobody else in the house. And I looked up in the middle of the kitchen and I said, Lord, if you can do that,
Right.
what else can you do?
Right,
And
right.
I get
I'm invested
goosebumps.
now.
Yeah, I
I'm
get
invested
goosebumps
now.
thinking. I was like, what else can you do
Yeah.
with my life? I want to know. You do it. You do whatever you want. Worst, never say that. You do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do it
Yep.
because you proved to me you're real.
I'm saying you got to be careful. My nanny used to say, I said, Lord, give me patience, not strength. She's like, don't ask that. Don't say that. Don't do that.
So this is the part of the story that everybody's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I bet your life was just a bed of flowers after that, wasn't it? Like it was just nothing but unicorns and beautiful sunflowers everywhere, and rainbows, and no, it wasn't. It was
Womp
the
womp.
opposite of that, actually, and I don't mean that in a diminishing way. I'm just telling the truth. My life felt like I always compared as if I was doing about 50 miles per hour through an intersection, and I just got sideswiped by a semi. It went in every single direction possible.
Right.
And it was chaotic.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Me and my wife, we were expecting my daughter at this point. We moved pretty quick in our relationship, so it wasn't very far into our relationship that we were already expecting another child. So this was my second child. You know what I mean? But God had kept me moving. He was keeping me moving, and there was a lot of hurdles. And that first couple years that I gave my life to God was probably some of the most difficult years of my life.
sure, yeah.
That wasn't around drugs. That was just responsibilities, right? It was during a recession. Me and my wife had our daughter, which was a newborn. I had a son from a previous relationship. I had all that stuff going on, which wasn't always the greatest either. And we were struggling, like literally. Whenever we could get free food, we were getting it.
Yeah.
We were making hamburger helper with deer meat every night.
That's
you know what I mean?
you listen, ramen and some Jiffy cornbread will humble
Right.
you really quick.
But you know what I always tell people is we didn't have enough money to pay our bills. Like we had a cheap house. It was like less than $400 a month. But we just didn't have enough. But you know what? The Lord provided every time. And I'm not joking. Every single time that there was a bill, we was about to get our electric shut off. We were about to get our water shut off, or we didn't have food, or we was always able to provide for our child, for our kids, but not for ourselves.
Yeah.
But man, every time we'd open that mailbox, and I'm not
Something
joking,
pops in.
there'd be a check in the mail from some random person we've never met. I'm not even joking. Or we got a check one time from a guy we met one time a year before that.
Wow.
And it just was on his heart to send this amount, and it was the exact amount we needed to pay this electric bill.
Unreal.
I'm not making this up.
Gives me
I have
chills.
paper records that can prove that.
Yeah.
There was times a lady came to our door and brought $1,000. I think it was $1,000. Pretty sure. I know it was at least $1,000 cash
Wow.
because she just wanted to bless us. And it
Wow.
wasn't even her. She was doing it for someone else because they didn't want us to know who they were. This was continuously happening all the time. But in the midst of all this, God connected me with different people in my life that was going to be big players in my life. He connected me to people that were part of the Christian music circuit.
Yeah.
And they were doing entertainment for the Christian music circuit. So they had these contracts with these music festivals. And they had heard my testimony. And they're like, you need to tell other people this.
Yeah.
Other people need to hear this. There's other people that's going to do the same thing.
You're going to save somebody.
So I was really hesitant. I was like, nope, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But I did. And I'm glad I did because I'm not a social person.
Yeah.
I don't like crowds. I don't do it. And then I was really, really, really bad. I had diagnosed with social anxiety. I was on meds for it. It was bad. And I was like, I don't know, man.
Not
That's a
my
good
vibe right
idea.
now,
you know?
yeah.
He's like, just do a couple of them. If you don't like, you don't have to do it. So I did it, but I was able to paint on stage while I was doing it. So that was kind of
wow.
cool. Yeah. So I was able to do my artwork and tell my testimony. And then they would do music, and that'd be like their hype man for the different bands. And I got to meet all kinds of different Christian music bands and artists. And we was able to experience some rock star treatment.
Yeah.
And they put us in 5-star hotel rooms.
Wow.
All catered food at these events. We're sitting next to newsboys.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah.
Just eating with them.
Just chilling with them.
Yeah,
Oh my
just because
gosh.
of art, But it wasn't just because of art. It was because it was God. It's what God did. Because 2 years before that, I'm in a hospital for suicide. You know what I mean? So, anyways, God started putting these people in my life.
Yeah.
In that amount of time, God had put a good friend of mine, Sean Malone, in there. Sean Malone was a buddy I'd met him a few years before that, but he had always helped me with getting my art out there, and he was always pushing me. He was always like, dude, you gotta do more art. You gotta do more murals. And, even when I was depressed, he would come pick me up and just take me to his house. And we'd just watch Alice in Chains Unplugged on MTV. And just hang out. But he knew. He had a vision. He knew that there was a talent there. And he knew that if I took it the right way, I could do something.
Yeah.
So then when I meet my wife, it was like, I give my life to God. I'm doing this Christian music circuit. And this starts opening doors. To all kinds of art projects, murals, window painting. And he was a big part of that. He was opening, like God and Sean Malone, kind of were like pushing these things out to me, and it was slowly progressing. And I was able to build an art career
Out of that.
kind of out of where God started with it,
Wow.
right? And because then I went from the Christian music circuit to doing painting live and doing my testimony with a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
And did some stuff with him for a while and ended up going to like prisons.
Wow.
And then that went to my passion, which art's my passion, but another huge passion of mine is mental health.
Yeah.
And helping people that are going through that struggle because I live it every day.
Every single day is a battle.
Yeah.
It is.
So I was like, I want to go into mental health. That's where I want to go. I feel like that's where I need to be. And so I think it was in 2013, a few years after we got married, I started attending Ivy Tech, focusing on psychology and sociology. And I was super into it. I actually had the best grades I ever had in my life.
Wow, right.
But I didn't finish it because I was actually working in mental health at the time. I got hired through Centerstone at the time. They hired me as I was actually hired as like a sub person, like to fill in for people because they didn't have spots.
Sure.
But I was actually a certified recovery specialist with the state when it was really hard to get. It was only 20 of us picked out of the whole state to get certified by the state. It was a whole final, all that. But what that is, it's talking about recovery from substance abuse. But it also mainly focused on mental health.
Wow.
And how we deal with our mental health. So anyways, was able to do all that and got certified, got into mental health and was working it. And I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah.
It was the best thing ever. It was stressful sometimes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I worked with adults that were co-occurring with addiction and SMIs, so serious mental illnesses, that were coming either out of a mental institute, prison, or homelessness. That was the only, because that was the grant I was working off of. So they had everything against them. And to see those people go from that to living in their own apartment, to grocery shopping, to meal planning.
Little things you don't even think about.
Yeah,
you know?
it humbled me.
But they're hurdles for people to get through.
Greatly.
Yeah.
Because here I was like, well, I have to meal plan. Like,
yeah.
What? Or we have to make a grocery list. You can't
Pizza
go to the
rolls
grocery
if I'm lucky,
store,
right? You know.
Why you're a grown man? You're 40-something years old. Why can't you
Right.
go to the grocery store? Because they never went to a grocery
No
store.
one showed them these skills.
They don't know how to go. They've never been in one. You know.
That's sad.
They don't know how to budget. They don't know how to vacuum. This is all skills that you should know as an adult.
But they were not provided.
That they were never provided. And there's a lot of those people out there. But then you give them these skills, and then you have the whole world that's against them. And you give them these skills, and they still prevail. There's no paycheck. There's no dollar
Can't put a price
sign
on that.
that could ever price that.
No.
And it's the most incredible feeling. And you're going to have failures along the way. Not failures. They're not failures. I don't mean that.
No.
But I mean what I felt.
You might lose them.
I felt
You
like I
might-
failed a lot of times because I felt like I could have done more. But
Yeah.
you always felt that.
Yeah.
But there's always those successes that kept you hanging. This is the problem. In addictions in Indiana, in the mental health segment, the addiction segment of mental health, the funding is the lowest of the barrel.
I guarantee that. I guarantee it.
I have heard from some friends that are still in the field that the funding has gotten better. But at that time, it was the bottom percentage of funding that was needed, what they felt was needed in Indiana.
I'm
Which is
curious.
crazy.
I mean, I would love to know where Indiana as a whole stands in percentages of people in active addiction, because you're right. I mean, I worked for a hospital in Seymour. I won't name drop. It's pretty
Right.
off, but I worked for a hospital, and do you know how hard it was for me to call and say, sorry, your insurance says you only get like 5 days in rehab. Sorry, you don't qualify for this.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's horrible. I hated being the messenger of that, and that actually affected my mental health when I would have to call and be like, well, my insurance will pay for my therapy, but this person gets to suffer.
And this is just my opinion, but I have a problem with it because we have so many prisons in Indiana.
We do. A huge one. Was it Terre Haute's one of the biggest ones, right?
We have huge prisons in Indiana, and we have private prisons in Indiana, which I don't even know how that even
Is
a
that not
thing.
so scary? Like, is that not just so? It's like
it's crazy.
all I think of is Orange is the New Black when all that happened, and all the ways they treated people and that. And it's like, oh my God, that's real though.
Now you compare that number of how many institutions we have, penitentiaries we have, and then how many mental health, like institutionalized, long stay that we have.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
When we start addressing the mental health, the things from childhood, if we give people coping skills, I could almost guarantee you the incarceration rate would slam to the floor.
If we could address, like you said, the mental health this is the other part that we fought this when I was working in addictions. They didn't want to address the mental health first. They wanted to address the addictions first. This was the model.
Right. But then you're going to go right back to where you were.
Get them off drugs and then start working on the counseling.
Cope first.
No.
Cope
the reason they're
first.
doing drugs is because of something that's not right.
Something's not
More than
right.
likely, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big fight. And I think they're making a turn. I really do. I think they're making a good turn. I think they're realizing that they can't ignore this anymore. You can't sweep this under a rug. It's only getting worse. And we've lost a whole generation.
Oh my God. I mean, people that, straight A students, athletes, a friend of mine, this most intelligent person I knew passed away because I think he relapsed. And what frustrates me, and I think where the mindset shift is that is someone's baby. At the end of the day, yes, there's a nuisance. Yes, they're breaking into houses at times because they're desperate. That's someone's baby.
Amen. Yeah.
That is somebody's baby, and we got to take care of them.
I get it because when we opened our studio, one of our tattoo studio, one of our the reason I wanted to open a tattoo studio was not just to tattoo people.
Yeah.
I wanted to create something that helped people. It helped our
Yeah.
community that we were in, and not just be a business in the community. I
Yeah.
wanted to be a fabric of that community. I want to be part. I want to be woven into it, and I want to create as much avenues of success and anything that we can bring that's positive to the town through that.
Yeah.
So going into it, we wanted to create groups that we did Bible studies. I think the first 2 years we were there, we did Bible studies at a tattoo shop, which
Is
maybe,
that so unorthodox to
right,
people?
maybe
You know?
not. People don't agree with that. And I got a lot of emails along the way, and I'm sure I'll still get them.
But do you know that's what pushes people away?
Yeah, I agree.
That is what pushes people away from getting that
There's
help.
a quote by Shane Claiborne, and I hope I say it right. But I think it says Christianity spreads best Christianity spreads best not through force, but through fascination.
Yeah.
If people are fascinated by what they see, like I was, they're gonna do it. They're gonna be at least intrigued by it, right?
Yeah.
And that's gonna be their choice whether they want to do it. But what I mean is they're gonna be intrigued, and so I think that when we opened the studio, that was our plan. Is we wanted to bring people in. We wanted to help those people and be something of a service to our community, whatever way we could. So Bible studies was awesome. I miss doing. I still want to do them again sometime, because it would be maybe 2 or 3 people. It might be 10 or 12 people, but it was all amazing. It was such really powerful stuff. And I remember a couple of times they would say, "I wouldn't go back to a church for nothing.
Yeah.
I won't walk into a building called a church, but I still love God and I still want to learn about God." So when I found out I could go to a tattoo shop and learn about God and talk about God with other people that think the same way, I was relieved, you know? And so I was like, that's what we got to do. We got to be different, right? We got to think different. And so it went from that to a lady that she helped me when I was a runaway. When I was 16, she housed me, let me stay in her basement while the cops were knocking on the door.
Oh my God.
She did. She really did. And she was a great woman. And I love that lady to death. And she really helped me a lot through my teenage years. She actually found out I was sleeping in my car, and she's like, no,
you're not.
You're not doing that. But anyways, we had stayed connected over the years, and she got a hold of me one day, and she said, "Hey, we need to find a place in Crothersville that's just like an empty room that's a decent size that we could hold meetings at." And I was like, "Okay, what kind of meeting? Like a business meeting or what?" And she's like, "No, a recovery meeting." And I was like, "Okay.
Say less.
Say less. When do you want to do it?" She's like, "Well, do you have the space?" I was like, "I got a back room. I got a lobby. It's pretty big," because this was in our old location. So we had about 2,500 square foot. We were only using half of it. So yeah, you can use it. You know, I'm not charging anything. That's crazy because they were going to pay rent. I was like, no,
right.
just use it. So anyways, it was God, you know, and I want to say that because it wasn't anything I did. It wasn't anything she did, anything else. It was all God, and it was meant to be. That building was meant to be where we was at in that season.
A staple of what was happening
meant
around
to be.
you.
It was God was projecting it the whole time. And so anyways, they decided to do this recovery meeting there. And the first meeting, I think there was 3 people that was there. And I remember just having this feeling of God's doing it. God's in control. It doesn't matter who's here. It doesn't matter if there's one person. That one person needed to be here.
Yeah.
Right? So anyways, it goes from 3 people within a year. There was the last meeting they had was 127 people.
Shut your mouth.
Inside of a tattoo shop. Obviously, we couldn't fit everybody.
Sure.
So
putting speakers outside. No.
Yeah, we had to open the side door and the front door, and they had to listen.
Wow.
That's how many people were attending this Celebrate Recovery meeting, right? So this was the other thing that we knew God was in there, because Celebrate Recovery is it might be an international program, but I know it's a nationwide.
I'm pretty sure it's nationwide.
So it's a nationwide recovery meeting program. I highly suggest it. Really amazing, but they're very organized. So you can't just use their name. You can't just use their books and all that. You have to be licensed with them. They want to make sure you're doing it the right way.
Adhering to the program.
So
Yeah.
this is the thing. They, in Jackson County, or in Indiana, or Jackson County, we know for sure, they had never approved a Celebrate Recovery meeting that wasn't in a church or a government building.
Really? Wow.
This is a tattoo shop. It's not a non-for-profit. It's a LLC. It's a tattoo shop.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
So in order for it to be accredited by probation, because a lot of these people had to go to a meeting.
Oh, okay. So that's part of their
So
probation.
a lot of the attendance was people that was required. They didn't really want to go.
Wow.
I'm not going to say they didn't want to go, but they were.
If they didn't have to be there, they may not have
weren't gonna
been.
be there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it was either AA, NA, or Celebrate Recovery. I think that was their three
There's your
options.
options. Yeah.
So they would go to Celebrate Recovery. A lot of these people were from Crothersville too, so they didn't have a driver's license, so that was their only option.
They walked to
Yeah.
you.
So it was right there, and it was a tattoo shop, so they were cool with it, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, it went over amazing. It went over so well, and there's still a picture that goes around, and I don't have it saved, but every once in a while someone will send it to me, and it was a picture of at the end of every meeting they do a prayer circle, and we go outside in the parking lot and do a prayer circle. The last meeting, the prayer circle was so big that the police blocked the road off, 31.
You're kidding.
Because it went out in the middle of the road.
Wow.
In front of this tattoo shop.
Wow.
This was the crazy part about that meeting, is that meeting, there was two guys that walked in. Now, with Celebrate Recovery, you have to realize this is every walk of life, because addiction hits every walk of life.
It does. It
So
does.
Every person you can imagine is there.
All the way up to your suit and
dressed-
ties?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Every kind of background, right? So we didn't think nothing about it. It was new faces. We always see new faces. Some you never see again. Some of you see more often. But anyways, at the end of the meeting, one of them comes up to me and he says, I want to introduce myself. He said, but before I do so, I want to start off with apologizing. And I was like, what? What did you do?
Ding my car?
You know?
Like,
like, what happened? You know? And he said, I am the lead pastor over here at the Baptist church here in town. The biggest church in town, I think, that I know of. And he said, I need to apologize on our behalf because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Wow.
He said, I love what you guys got going on here. He said, actually, God's moving and I can feel it before I even walked in. He said, I know God's moving. I've heard about this. I've heard about this meeting for a year. He said, but what I came to the realization was, as a church, as the body, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We have let our guard down. We have relaxed too much.
Wow.
And focused in the wrong areas.
Yeah.
Because if this meeting has this many people in this little bitty town in a tattoo shop,
Yeah.
where's the need at?
I started
It's
to
a
say.
big need.
Yeah.
Right? And he said, I'm not putting down what you guys are doing here. I love what you guys are doing here and continue doing it. He said, this is what I want to tell you. I want to offer you guys a bigger space.
Wow.
He said, we have a church over there. He said, you don't even have to be in the church. We have a whole separate building. It's a gymnasium. And it's got a kitchen. And it's got a PA system. It's got a projector and all that. And he said, a few hundred people can fit in it easy by building code.
Wow.
And it's free. We'll give you all the access you want. We'll give you the keys to it. But that's if you want to do it. And you don't have to. But we want to offer that to you because that's what we need to do.
We've been missing
And
out.
if
Yeah.
we can't do that, tell us how we can help.
Wow.
So anyways, it was discussed because I wasn't the one doing these meetings. I was just giving them a place.
You're
right?
given the space. Yeah.
But anyways, they were able to get the space and they was using it and it still goes on to this day. So another thing I have to put in there that it was really a crazy moment. So while these Celebrate Recovery meetings were going on, it was on Monday nights. At that time, I worked on Monday nights. So I would still be tattooing
While this was happening.
in my booth most of the time.
Yeah.
I would be tattooing in my booth and people would end up booking Monday nights just so they could listen to the meeting
While
and
they're
get
getting some ink
tattooed.
therapy.
Yeah. And not necessarily like trying to mess with the system. These people
No.
weren't on probation or
No,
anything.
no.
But they loved hearing it because they loved hearing the people talk about God and
Yeah.
all this while they get a tattoo. And it's like, I feel like I'm going to church and I'm getting a tattoo at the
Yeah.
same time. But this last meeting, they had me stop in my tattoo. They said, can you just take 5 minutes? Like, that's all we ask. We'll let you get, but we won't bother you at all. Sure. I come over there and they had me come up to the mic, and they're like, we had you come up to the mic to tell you that in order for us to get certified through Celebrate Recovery as the actual licensed meeting and validated through probation in the state, we have to give it a name. So we've called this by, registered as our license. This meeting is the Beauty from Ashes Celebrate Recovery.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And so that meeting is still going on at First Baptist Church in Crothersville, I think at 6 p.m. on every Monday night.
Wow.
And that's been 5 or 6 years.
That's awesome. And that's impactful. And if you guys didn't hear me from earlier, that is Kyle's business name, Beauty from Ashes, which is, that whole place is a vibe. Can we talk about that for a second? I would go and sit in there. Matter of fact, the last tattoo you did, Runaway to Mars, I think you were playing it.
Yes.
And man, it just hit the soul.
That's a song.
All the way through the sound system. Like, man, I'd sit in there all day if I could. I would just, but you create this environment of creativity, safety, because that's the thing about church, right? And it's not me docking it, but so many people feel judged. God, I can remember the first time I wore blue jeans to church, and I was scared to death because I'm like, oh man, I just know somebody, and that's not the intent.
Yeah,
that was not the intent.
Yeah.
It's not the intent. We could sit in this room and bring whoever, and it could be a church is where you're gathering, right? Isn't
that's
that
right?
Isn't
Yeah,
that,
there were 2 or more gathered. That's
where
the presence of God. Yeah,
we got to quit judging, man.
I agree. And something you said earlier too was when you said about people that are overdosing. That's somebody's baby, right? Something that we did as a studio just a couple years ago that was kind of provoking. Not everybody agreed with it. I got a lot of hate mail for it, but I made the same clear statement basically. So what we did is we searched out to find a naloxone box. We wanted a Narcan box on our studio, outside of our studio.
I remember you doing that, yeah.
And we were adamant about getting one. We finally had found a company that was willing to come out and put it up for us, and they're great. They're really, and we actually have like 2 or 3 nonprofits that fill it up, so it never goes empty.
Wow.
Anyways, because what that does is it keeps somebody, hopefully it'll keep somebody from overdosing.
Hopefully.
If they're overdosing, it'll keep them from dying, basically. So that, a lot of people look at it as, oh, well, you're condoning that. You're telling people that it's okay to shoot up or to do fentanyl or whatever. You're telling them that's okay. No, I don't think that's okay at all, and I hate that.
It's
really
horrible.
do.
It's horrible if they turn to that, yeah.
But I also know that I have a brother that's still living. I have a dad. I have a son. I have 2 sons. I have a daughter. I have, you know what I mean? My wife. I mean, I have a lot of people in my life that I love dearly. That I don't know. Maybe they get on an addiction that I don't even know about.
Yeah.
Maybe they're closeted about it. I don't know. Hopefully not. But say that was to happen. That's one of my loved ones that's in that parking lot about to die in that car.
And you're telling me they're not valuable
they're
enough
not
to
valuable
you because it's not your
and
problem?
that's what I tell people. Like, I'm not saying you have to agree with this box, but what I want you to put in your back of your head is if it was your brother that you didn't know had a problem and he was overdosed and you had him in your car and you knew that box was there, would you not use it?
Exactly.
Or would you let him die, or would you use it? That changed people's way.
That's the perspective people need to have. Yeah. I early on, like, okay, when I graduated, the HIV epidemic was going on in the county. And it would make me so mad because like people are talking so bad about my community because people are doing drugs and it's their fault. And it's like, I worked at the hospital here in town. Yeah. I saw so many young people pass from addiction. Yeah. And the amount of people, like their mother, I'll never forget, I get teary-eyed, like their mom would come in. Like that was a mind shift for me. Yeah. I pray to God my children never go through it, but I pray to God someone's there to take care of them if I'm not there.
Yeah.
You know,
that's right.
Genuinely, like seeing that, if you don't see it and you turn a blind eye to it, you're part of the problem.
Well, another thing I tell people now, because it's been up there for probably a couple years, what I tell people now is in that couple years, I know for a fact that 3 people have came into our shop that have asked where they could get help. And I have a whole list of numbers of different places, and I have connections with mental health and rehabs because I know a lot of them.
Yeah.
So usually I'm able to connect them with somebody that's
pretty quick.
They come pick them up, like right there. Now, the reason they were there in the first place was to come get Narcan.
Yeah.
But for some reason,
they felt compelled.
They just turned into that door and said, hey. And I'm like, hey, are you looking to get a tattoo? What do you have in mind today? And they're like, nah, not really, man. Help. It's going to be weird, but, man, I need to kick the dope, and I need help, man. And I don't know. Like, I know you guys got this box out here. I don't know if you knew where I could go or how to do that.
That's so impactful. That is so important.
I know for a fact that's happened 3 times that I've been there.
That you've been there.
I know. And so I don't think it's so much of a negative thing. I think it's hopefully saving lives. And that's what I mean is I think in the long run, no matter what we do in our lives, it's the impact that we make on others is what's going to make the biggest wave, right?
Take a second to just acknowledge someone. I can't imagine how many people we just have let walk past us that just needed someone to tell them they like their shoes.
Oh my gosh.
Be the reason they stuck it out.
In tattooing, oh my gosh, they'll just let go.
I think I spilled my guts on the one you did back here.
They will literally cry. I mean, they will be crying sometimes while you're tattooing, telling you about whatever the situation that is in their life. But that just tells you, if you can get past the thick layer that a lot of us hold, it's super fragile.
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Everybody's going through something. And if they say they're not, man.
And I'm telling you, the people that I automatically judge, I don't like admitting that, but I do sometimes. I just see somebody, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a Karen. But I mean, just like the people that you think have it all together,
do not.
No,
sir.
They don't have it together. They don't have it together at all. I have people that come to me all the time, a lot, not all the time, a lot of time. They come to me and I don't know how you do it, Kyle. You just got it all together. I'm like, are you serious? Dude, this is a mess.
I sort of say, there's a lot going on up here.
There's a mess up here.
She's just on mute. Shout out Lexapro.
Yeah. I shout out to my wife. She deals with me because I'm not medicated, and I don't recommend that to everybody.
Everybody's got to find what works for them. I think that's the journey of it all.
But she's a very patient woman, and she deals with it, and I hate it sometimes because I am manic depressant, so I have really highs and I have really lows.
Yeah.
And she's always there. It doesn't mean she loves it. Doesn't mean she agrees with it.
She loves you and she knows what she needs to do to be there for you. Exactly. I mean, she is incredible. And not to brag, but she is kind of a Swiftie alongside me. So she's already up on my pedestal. But no, I think when you battle mental health, like your partner or your support person, like, oh my God, like I would not have survived. I've always had anxiety and depression. But I didn't really fully address it till my husband's like, hey, like, you can get help. I don't think any less. He was my rock. He was the one that supported. I wouldn't have survived postpartum. I would. Like, there's days sometimes I'm just, like, spiraling. And he's like, hey, like, maybe go to the bathtub. Like, take
right, yeah.
Go to the gym. Go do something.
My wife, she can see it before I can see it now.
Ethan's like that.
Kind of scary in a way because I'm like, I'm in denial most of the time. I'm like, and it's so crazy because I'll be 100% honest. It wasn't until recently, very recently, I'm talking the last year maybe, that I would even acknowledge.
There was a problem there.
Like, I wouldn't even say the words depression. I wouldn't say the word anxiety. I wouldn't say bipolar. I wouldn't even give it that power, right?
Yeah.
And there was a part of that was just like, I'm not going to give it the power. I'm not going to let it control me, But I think there's a part of that where you're shutting your eye to it. You're putting something over your eyes.
I think acknowledging it is what gives you back your power. And it took a lot of therapy for me to figure that out.
You're right.
Because I was embarrassed. I didn't talk about it. I'm like, people are going to just think so poorly of me. Like, I have this imminent fear of death. I think a lot of people do. And I'm like, dang, I'm going to give myself a heart attack thinking about stuff like this.
Yeah.
But I think when I really acknowledge, it's like, okay, yeah, I do have ADHD. Yeah, I have anxiety. Yeah, I have depression. Like probably a little bit of OCD in there. I'm sure I do. But the minute I acknowledge it and the minute I know what my coping skills are that I've also learned through therapy, it's different. I'm yep, I know how I'm feeling. This is what I need to do. And it's not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. There are days I just don't want to get out of bed.
Yeah. I still have denial a lot.
Yeah.
I just think I have a lot of energy. So I think it's normal to stay awake for 3 days with no drugs involved.
Yeah, you're just like, this is fine. Yeah. This is fine.
And then when I start getting very agitated, my wife's like, so
modern day Picasso over here, wasn't Picasso a little mad?
Yeah, exactly. But she always knows before it even happens.
Which is great to have.
She can see my behavior patterns changing.
Right, before you get bad.
Like my sleep pattern will change. I won't eat. I'll go less eating.
Your motivation kind of.
My conversations will just. I will just be a runaway train.
Yeah.
I'll just scatter everywhere. I won't be able to have thoughts, and she knows it. She can see it just escalating. This is the difference, though, and I like to say this because I like to make it very clear to people. I'm not medicated, but I don't recommend that. I'm not saying that's the right way to go.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, the thing that helps me, and this is just me, but the thing that helps me with my manic depression, I'm still dealing with it. I'm still denying it sometimes. I'm still having the super highs and the super lows. But what keeps me going is I stay busy.
Yeah.
I stay busy all the time.
Yep.
And if I have a busy schedule, it doesn't matter how depressed I am. I still
you can't
have
think
to do
about it.
I still have to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying ignore your mental health.
No, please don't. Oh my God, please don't. No.
Don't ignore your mental health.
Pressure cooker for sure.
What I do now is when I'm feeling, especially the mania, when I'm feeling it coming on or my wife notices it's coming on, I just hit the work hard. I hit whatever project I'm doing as hard as I can. Because what used to debilitate me is now going to rehabilitate.
That's oh my gosh, that is the best thing. Put that on a t-shirt. Put that on a t-shirt, somebody.
Because that's it. If I don't keep going, I'm going to drop, and I know it. I'm going to, and so and I'm just going to explain it because I want people to know this. The main reason I don't take medication, and this is not an excuse, this is 100%, I've lived it. I've been on all of them.
Right,
okay? I've been on all the antipsychotics, the worst of them all. I've been on them. But the reason I don't take medication is because every single medication that I've been on so far, it just takes my creativity away.
Wow.
I don't want to create.
I didn't even think about that. It kind of turns that part of your brain off. Turns a lot of parts of your brain off. Just not PG related.
Kind of a zombie almost.
Right. And that's I mean, it took me a few meds to really get to a point where I was like, okay, this one's good. Yeah. Like I don't feel, because when I went through postpartum, the first thing, they put me on was sertraline, Zoloft. Yeah. And I literally describe it to people. I was sitting in my brain watching TV while my body just did what it wanted to. I hated that. Yeah. And that was it for me. And then I tried Prozac. Nope. And then I finally found something that worked. And there's like I did a gene site test.
Yeah, I was about to say, now they have gene testing.
Yes. And it's funny because I'll tell, sorry, Dad, shout out us for having depression, anxiety. It runs in the family. I told him, I'm like, hey, if that doesn't work for you, try this because it works for me. And they're telling me, genetically, if it works for one close family member, it should work for the other.
So that's another avenue to go. So that's what I always like to tell people is I always say that because that's a big part of my life, because what causes my anxiety, most of my anxiety, what causes my own personal identity and far as my own self-awareness and what I think of myself, self-esteem, is all wrapped around my creativity.
Wow. Yeah.
So if I stop it and I take medication, okay, mentally I'm in a better place.
But are you
am I?
Are you you?
Yeah. Am I in a better
happy?
place? Because creating art is what makes me happy. So I always say the very thing that makes me happy is the very thing that's killing me every day. and it's a double-edged sword.
It is. It is when you identify with something like that. And I think that's the thing. Like I'm very big on, like, in my work, I identify a lot in the fact that, like, I get, I don't want to say it's a high, because, like, I never went through addiction, so I can't speak on how it feels. But, like, I yearn for that gratification from others that are my peers or above me in leadership. I yearn for it in that way. That's how I identify. Of course, I identify mother, wife, but separately. And I'm like, okay, we got to be healthy about this. Yeah. Like, I can't give people the power to make me feel. Yeah. I got to focus on it myself.
I'll never forget, there was a point, I don't know, like, what age I was, but I was probably in my mid-20s. And it was, right when I met my wife. So in that time frame, the first few years we were married. And I remember thinking one day, I don't know why I had this thought, but I thought about everything I used to think I couldn't do.
Yeah.
Right? Everything I was told I couldn't do, but then everything I told myself I couldn't do, whether it was physically capable, mentally, or location, whatever,
means,
right?
Whatever
the means are, whatever the reason, I couldn't do it. And then I thought about it. Why couldn't you do it? Yeah. Well, because someone told you couldn't do it, or you couldn't do it, or you were addicted, or you were on drugs, or you didn't have the money, blah, blah. So I thought of everything that I couldn't do before, that I wanted to do, but I couldn't do.
Yeah.
And I kind of made this mental list of myself. Every goal that I thought I wanted in life that I never did because I just couldn't, I'm going to do all of those now.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go down the list.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to stop until I get to the end of it. And I don't even know if there is an end.
Just keep working at it. I think you just keep working at it.
Yeah. So my goal now is, I want to do everything that I set out to do. If I believe that I can do something in my head, if I can convince myself that I'm capable of doing it, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm going to be good at it.
I may fail epically,
Doesn't
but
mean
I
I'm
tried
gonna
my
succeed.
hand. Yeah.
But you know what? I tried.